because he turns on a dime. But this one is Lindsey, where suddenly he's standing up to Donald Trump, and that is a good thing. Well, here's Lindsey. He said, I stand with the police officers who protect our streets, federal courthouses, and the United States Capitol against rioters. They deserve our respect and support, and I will not second-guess the decisions they made under dire circumstances. All Americans are entitled to have a speedy trial in their day in court, but those who actively engage in violence for whatever political cause must be held accountable and not forgiven. He's talking like a Republican talks, right? But that hasn't been the case over the past 6 months. You've had people saying, oh, they were just tourists. You had Ron Johnson, a senator, saying, oh, I wasn't concerned at all. Well, they were beating the hell out of police officers with American flags. Now we're starting to hear Lindsey saying this yesterday or the day before. The guy from Missouri with a bone structure like a bird. Who's the guy?
Who,
Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley, exactly.
I love the people getting like this. A bird?
He's got a little bone structure, like a bird.
We'll say that for the bone structure.
Well, no, it's very delicate. Very delicate. Yeah, but anyway, I'm so glad people can answer that question.
Yeah, I'm a generalist.
But you are a generalist who... You made a bad career choice.
Obviously.
But anyway, what's happening with the Republican Party? There seems to be a shift, and I think Trump is sensing it.
Well, I just want to talk about Mark more, actually. So we can,
okay. Exactly.
Look, I think that we should look at the Republican Party in a couple of ways. One, at least as early as last June, when I was traveling, I started to detect the possibility that Republican voters wished Trump had won, were disappointed that he'd lost, did not like Republicans who badmouthed him, but were thinking to themselves and were telling me in interviews, you know, I'd love to find somebody like him, but just not him.
Right.
Somebody with his agenda and his fighting spirit, but just somebody who's fresh so we can turn the page. And as we get closer to the 2022 elections, one of the things going on is that the same way Democrats have had trouble, according to voters, because a lot of voters don't think they have focused on the issues that matter to them right now, inflation, still dealing with the pandemic. Some people feel the same about Trump in that they don't want to keep relitigating things that happened a couple of years ago.
Right.
They don't feel necessarily about January 6th and Trump's post-election behavior the way many Democrats feel, the way many swing voters feel, the way some Republicans feel. But they don't want to keep talking about it. They want to talk about the future and the problems they have now. And so there are some signals that if Trump continues to put 2020 first. And look, I've interviewed him about this. Other people have interviewed him about this. And he insists that he's not going to let it go. He thinks that this is what the base wants to hear and that Republicans that don't do this are going to suffer, at least in their primary elections. And that's why this upcoming season, beginning in March with the Texas primaries, carrying all the way through August, is going to be a huge test. Because for those Republicans that are agreeing with Trump, insisting the election was stolen, and making that front and center, we're going to see how they do. Yeah. For those that are taking a more future-oriented approach, saying, hey, listen, love Trump, but we got to look to the future, it's going to be a chance for us to see really where Republican voters are on this.
Yeah, and you know, Willie, one of the most, I think, dramatic examples of this is Arizona, where you look and the candidate for governor is so far out on the Trump limb. You look at the person that's running the party statewide. Look at the fact that they've censored their Republican governor and Cindy McCain, and they're in a swing state now. They're in a state with 2 Democratic senators. And, you know, that's a perfect example. As we roll through this primary season, it's going to be really interesting to see if Republicans are going to start doing what they need to do to win general elections, or they're going to continue looking back. I have a suspicion, looking at these polls, they want to move forward.
Yeah, those are the same Republican state officials, by the way, in Arizona who hired the cyber ninjas to come in and see if there was bamboo in the ballots because China was stuffing the ballot boxes. At the end of the day, they found a few more votes for Joe Biden than they did for Donald Trump. It was a busy 24 hours in this investigation to January 6th. The National Archives now says it plans to turn over records from former Vice President Mike Pence to the January 6th committee. In a letter to Donald Trump, the agency said the records will be delivered on March 3rd unless a court order intervenes. The committee interviewed Pence's former chief of staff, Mark Short, last week. Meanwhile, the leader of the far-right extremist group, the Oath Keepers, testified remotely before the committee for nearly 6 hours yesterday. Stuart Rhodes appeared from a federal detention facility in Oklahoma, where he currently is awaiting trial on charges of sedition. His lawyers say he pleaded the fifth, but did end up speaking extensively about the history of the Oath Keepers. The committee also met with Jeffrey Clark yesterday. He is a former DOJ official accused of playing a key role in Donald Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election. According to the Senate Judiciary Committee, Clark pushed then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen to publicly announce the DOJ was investigating election fraud and to tell state legislatures they should appoint alternate slates of electors. And Jackie, you're reporting details this morning of a new memo circulated by Trump allies shortly before the attack on the Capitol. The memo reads in part, "We are requesting POTUS instruct Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher C. Miller to bring in these three individuals to form a core advisory team regarding foreign interference in the 2020 election. Among other things, they will run targeted inquiries of NSA raw signals that may not have been processed yet to pursue suspected foreign interference of the 2020 election vote count manipulation." So, Jackie, explain a little bit about who wrote this memo and the people that kind of fell in line and were pushing it. There are some sitting United States senators involved here. There is the CEO of a pillow company as well. How close did they get to pushing this all the way to the president?
Yeah, Willie, so we've seen a number of memos and pretty fringy ideas that have been surfaced in recent days and weeks, but this one is a little bit different in that the players involved in it whose names were on this memo have not been yet surfaced before, and one of them actually is still currently a military lawyer, this guy named Frank Colon, who I'm sure you all might recognize his name. It was famously photographed on Mike Lindell's papers as he walked into the Oval Office in the lead up to January 6th by our all-star photographer Jabin Botsford. But Colon is still a lawyer in the U.S. military. His name, again, was on this memo, along with someone named Michael Del Rosso, who unsuccessfully ran for Congress in Virginia, along with, again, a number of other pretty fringy conspiracy theorists, a former NSC staffer who left the White House under Trump because he was too extreme, anti-Muslim, thought that the U.S. was controlled by the deep state. But this memo is a little bit different in that it did not necessarily lay out a plan to seize voting machines, but rather wanted to analyze and secure unprocessed raw data to prove that there was foreign interference in